Hey everyone, thanks a lot for participating in today's webinar, and I do see a lot of attendees have already come in. We see about 25 to 30 people already in. We did have a lot of people register, so we'll just wait for 30 more seconds to get started, and then we'll jump right in. I hope that's okay with everybody. And just before we jump in, you do have the Q&A section. While we have others joining in, you do have the Q&A section, so you can always ask any questions that you may have through the presentation. We have the last 15 minutes for the question and answers itself. So feel free to share your questions. Okay, all right. I see Jay is already up to with the questions. Great. So I think we'll jump right in, and as we have more and more attendees coming, I do see people are coming in, so that's great. We'll jump right in, and we'll get started. So thanks everybody for taking out the time today. This is going to be about a 40 to 45 minutes long session, so really appreciate you guys taking out the time. I'll start with a quick introduction about myself and Emitrr. Essentially, I'm Anmol, and I'm the co-founder of Emitrr. I started Emitrr in 2018. Today we work with 1,000+ healthcare practices globally. And just to give you some sense of what we do, over 10 million text messages are exchanged through the platform. And my goal personally is to help at least 15,000 healthcare practices by 2025 to have a strategy in place and automate a lot of their patient experience, right? Now, before we jump in, as I cover all the details today of how you can acquire new patients, retain existing patients, and sort of keep your schedule full, I'm going to do that through a story of one of our existing customers, whose name is Mary Tilak. She owns 2 practices in Central America, and so it's not going to be boring. I promise you that. You're going to learn a lot because we've been working with them for almost a year now, and a lot of data that we've collected from 1,000+ practices that we work with, we're going to be sharing that, right? So that's essentially what we're going to be talking about. Before we jump in, let me tell you a few things about how the world is changing, especially post-COVID, right? The customer behavior has changed and is continuously changing, right? The only metric that you should be looking at on this screen is the one on the rightmost, right? Which says that 89% consumers today prefer to communicate via business text compared to phone calls or emails, right? Which means that the future of communication is SMS and not really phone calls, right? So we're essentially in a time and world where text message is the new email, right? It's the new email. So from 2000 to today, people preferred communicating via emails and phones, but that's changing very rapidly. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about, how you can essentially acquire new patients, retain existing patients, as well as keep your schedule full at all times using text messaging as a medium, right? This is essentially what we do for 1,000+ practices, as I told you. The talk is going to be relevant to you if you and your receptionist see yourself always on phone calls. If you're looking to streamline your medical business operations, right? If you're looking to automate and also digitize your office. We see in 1,000+ practices that we work with, we see that about 95% of them were still using pen and paper. 95% of them still use fax, phone calls, etc., and do things manually, right? So this is relevant if you're looking to move away from those and move to digital technology, right? But before we do that, let's try and understand what are the things that medical practices have to go through, right? A medical practice or a healthcare practice is expected to do all of this and a lot more, right? You're supposed to answer hundreds of phone calls every month, manage your reputation, making sure that your new patients, existing patients, are talking about the right things on social media, understand how patients are feeling about their experience, claims, hiring, in some unfortunate cases, as we're hearing what's happening with the talent today, firing, and of course, continuously keep growing your practice, right? The list just goes on, but how do you sort of achieve these things, right? Do you hire more members on the team? That's probably not the best way to do these things. Do you outsource this and compromise on the quality, or do you do all of these things manually? That's probably not the best way to run a healthcare practice. The best way probably is to use automation, right? Just the way your patients use Amazon, Uber, and all the tech, all the, I would say, consumer technology products today, they expect a very similar behavior from a healthcare practice when they talk to them. And that's exactly what we're going to show you in our practice today, in our presentation today, right? Before I talk a little bit about how we do this and how you could essentially achieve such results, I would love to understand if anybody anybody who's attending today, if you could drop your comments or in the Q&A section and let us know if you have an end-to-end strategy to essentially automate your entire patient experience, right? Which is acquiring new patients, retaining and keeping your schedules full. Have you already thought about it? If not, are you thinking about it in 2022, right? And all of what I said, you don't have to take my word for it. Steven, who runs a healthcare practice in Bakersfield, and 1,000+ other practices who work with us have achieved such results, right? So I don't see a reason why everybody else should not be following and using technology to automate a lot of your patient experience, right? All right, so we'll jump right in. In the next 30 minutes, I'll be talking about exactly these three things, which I've been talking about: how you can use text messaging, SMS, that you use to communicate with your family members, with your friends, to acquire new patients, retain existing patients, and keep your schedule full, right? If you look at a healthcare practice, essentially those are the three main goals of a healthcare practice, right? You got to keep working on acquiring new patients, retaining existing ones, and keeping your schedule full at all points in time, right? But why text messaging, right? The reason for that is 95% of your text messages will be read in the first 3 minutes. I'm sure that if all of you look at your phone and open up your phone, you will see that you have probably thousands of unread emails, but your SMS is probably much, SMS text messages are much below 5 or 10, right? That's the reason why people are moving away from emails, because email as a channel has saturated and text message is the new email, right? And that's exactly what we're leveraging. Calls go unanswered, emails go unread, right? So let's jump right in and talk about the first thing, which is acquiring new patients, right? So now I'm going to talk about 3 strategies that one of our customers called Mary Tilak used, using text messaging as a channel to acquire new patients, right? Before I jump into the first strategy, I want you to take a few seconds and think about this. On average, how many phone calls do you get every day? And of all the phone calls that you get, how many does your front desk actually answer these phone calls, right? Our research and data and working with 1,000+ practices tells us, on average, every practice misses 20 to 25% of incoming phone calls. If that's true, that you're putting so many dollars to drive patients through the virtual door, ring the phone at your practice, and 20 to 25% of these phone calls are not answered, then how do you expect to keep acquiring new patients, right? So that's the first strategy that we're going to talk about, how you can solve the problem of missed calls through text messages, right? Essentially, what I'm talking about here is that why should you convert missed calls to text messages, right? Why should you solve for the problem of missed calls? I'm sure after this webinar, some of you do not actively track the metric of missed calls or abandoned calls. If you use any software or if you use your personal phones, go and take a look, and you would be surprised to see that almost 20 to 25% of your incoming calls are being missed, right? Which is a lot of money left on the table. Research tells us that almost every missed call costs you approximately on an average $50, right? If you get 100 calls and you missed 20 of those, you know exactly the amount you're losing every day, right? And also 60% of your potential customers will go on to do business with someone else. I'm sure you have done this and experienced this yourself. If you miss a phone call and you try to call the patient is by then gone to some other practice, or they will never answer the phone, right? So that's the reason why you should solve actively for the missed call to keep acquiring new patients, right? But how do you do that, right? Let's talk about Mary Tilak, right? This is a practice with 2 locations. They have about 10,000+ patients across these 2 locations. Just to tell you a little bit about their numbers, in the last 6 months, they've missed 17,000 phone calls. Now that's massive, right? I mean, missing 17,000 phone calls, you may as well think that is the company answering any phone calls at all, but this is a high volume healthcare practice. And 80% of these patients never heard back, right? So you can imagine, because of the volumes, the front desk did not ever have the time to pick up the phone, listen to voicemails, or call back the practice, or call back the patient, right? Which was approximately $400,000 worth of revenue, right? Now, would you as a practice owner, or would you as a person who's responsible for the practice revenue, be okay with such a big loss? Absolutely not. So how do you solve this problem, right? Looking at the numbers, like I said, they missed approximately 17,000 phone calls, and that was approximately worth $400,000 in revenue. Now, what's the impact that missed calls to text added to to their practice, right? Now, when I say missed calls to text, let me take a step back and tell you what exactly that means. Every time you miss a phone call, you should have a capability to at least text back the patient automatically, letting them know that you're not available and they can continue the conversation via SMS, right? That's exactly what a platform like Emitrr does today for thousands of practices, right? Every time a business misses a phone call, we send out a text message automatically to the patient and we tell them that, hey, sorry, we're not available, but we can continue the conversation via text. On average, we've seen a 30% uplift in revenue for all of our customers, simply because now patients have a lot more trust, right? Now let's talk about the impact this created for Mary Tilak. On average, right, 15% of her incoming calls were for booking. That's direct revenue loss, right? So of the 17,000 missed calls, 15% of these were for, direct booking. People came in and typed on the text, I'm looking to book an appointment, when they received a text from the practice. That is super high intent, right? So we were able to capture all of these 15% and send out a text message to them, get their intent, and also help them book an appointment. What we essentially do is every time someone says, I want to book an appointment, because we also have online scheduling, we send them a unique link allowing them to book an appointment, right? So essentially, we automate the entire process. Imagine I call one of your practices, you miss a call, you don't pick up, I say I want to book an appointment, and the system automatically tells me, here's a link to book your appointment, right? I don't need to speak to anybody. That's exactly what happened at the practice. In addition to that, they realized through the missed call metrics, which I was showing you on the previous screen, they were able to look at the metrics. If it's not visible, maybe because the screenshot is small, all of you will get the slides after this webinar, so don't worry about that. They were able to realize that 40% patients were calling for prescription refills, which is probably not the best idea, right? You're losing at least 40% of your calls on just prescription refills, which is not necessarily revenue. Overall, like I said, it led to 30% increase or uplift in revenue, right? So it's very important to always understand that if I'm working so hard, paying agencies tons of dollars to make people find my practice, pick up the phone and dial, am I actually picking up all of these calls? If not, what am I doing with the missed calls? And that's exactly what Emitrr does, right? It sends a text message and continues the conversation automatically. So nobody has to essentially worry about the missed calls, right? The second strategy that I'm going to talk about for you to keep acquiring new patients is text message marketing, right? Now, you may ask me, what is text message marketing? For years, companies like MailChimp, I don't know how many of us have heard of MailChimp, but for years, we've heard of the concept of email marketing, right? Like I said, we are bringing in text message as the new email, right? Nobody reads emails. I'm sure that all of us have subscribed to a lot of emails. I want to ask everybody, when's the last time you opened a marketing email from any of the emails that you were subscribed to, and sort of looked at that offer, right? It just doesn't happen. Just the way for the last 20 years, emails have dominated. Now emails are going out of the pictures, and text messages are taking over. And that's exactly what text message marketing means, right? Essentially, what I'm saying is that if you have promotions, if you want to solve for any problem, reactivations, payments, text messaging is the right channel to use, right? So that you can acquire and keep bringing back patients. Think of it like the email marketing that you used for the last 20 years, but today, text is the channel, right? So that's exactly what we help you do, SMS marketing. Now, why? You might ask me, why should I use SMS? Emails working well. If I send out 1,000 emails, probably 20% of them, maybe 200 people read and maybe 10 or 15 of them respond, right? That is because that is super, super low response and conversion rate. With SMS, what happens is it has 98% open rates, right? So essentially, if you send out 100 text messages, 98 of them will get open. And this is not me, this is research that says SMSs get open, right? So that's essentially why you should use SMS marketing as a channel. Now let's talk about what are the results that some of our customers have achieved using SMS marketing to acquire new customers, right? Sorry, acquire new patients. So again, coming back to Dr. Tilak's office, the practice was using email as a channel, right? Which had, like I said, less than 14% open rate, and the response rate was way below 3%. So they were sending a lot of these emails, letting people know, hey, we have, now we offer laptops, we have the flu shots available, so on and so forth, right? But less than 3% people would open the email, and when they would go to the practice, people would say, hey, I never heard from you, I didn't know about this offer, or I did not know you had flu shots available, for example, right? Which, of course, made them realize that nobody reads emails, right? The same thing happened when they wanted to follow up on payments. I'm very confident that payments is probably one of the biggest challenge for most of the practices that are attending today. You may call, patients may not pick up after the appointment. You may send out emails, patients don't read emails. They started using SMS, and I'll tell you what happened with that, right? That's exactly what happened with them. Less than 10% payment follow-ups were being responded to, right? And zero, which is, I would love to understand if anybody has a patient reactivation strategy in place, but they had 0% patients coming back on their own, people who had not come back in the last 12 months, etc., right? Now, this is exactly how they were able to send out a campaign. They could add their campaign name, content, and send it out to thousands and thousands of patients, prospects who didn't actually become patients, right? With the system within a few minutes. So that's exactly what they did with our system, because we sync with EMRs like AthenaHealth, for example, and bring in your entire data. So you can create lists and send out SMSs. But instead of focusing on how they did it, let's look at the results, right? Overall, they had, 35% increase in communication, right? So if they send out 100 text messages, 35 of them responded. I'm sure that we will never see these results again with email, right? 60% of the payment follow-ups resulted in actual payment received, right? So they were able to send out links with payments, links with text, and receive payments, right? And they were able to reactivate with all of their patients and save a lot of time, right? Which they were actually, for their practice, which they were actually doing with email, phone calls, and content. Essentially, they were picking up the phone and dialing patients and saying that, hey, it's been 6 months, you're due for your annual wellness program, or you've not visited the practice, I hope everything is okay. And that, of course, resulted in a lot of time loss and, of course, poor conversion rates. So that's exactly what's the impact of text message marketing on Dr. Tilak's practice, right? So that's essentially why you should focus on text message marketing. So I've spoken about missed calls, text message marketing. We do have a lot of other activities that we do with other practices, but I'm just talking about the most important ones. The third and the most important ones, right? Reviews and reputation. Your reputation is everything, right? I can tell you that you may discontinue your marketing activities today. You may discontinue with the marketing agency that you work with today. It will still not have a big impact on your net new patient acquisition. But if you stop focusing on brand and reputation, you will see an exponential decline next week, next month onwards, right? Now, why should you focus on reviews and reputation to acquire new patients, right? You need to understand why reviews are important for acquisition of new patients, right? Let's first understand it from the patient side of things, right? 91% customers trust online reviews. So do I. If I have to find a doctor near me, dentist near me, I will first go and read reviews to understand, right? It's healthcare, it's sensitive. I want to make sure that it's equivalent to personal recommendation, right? And 90% of the customers read online reviews before actually visiting a business. So that tells you something about how the behavior is changing, right? People don't talk to each other to understand which practice do you go to. People go online, search for a doctor near me, search for a dentist near me, read the reviews, and take a decision. So it's important for you to drive reviews, not just because people read it, but also because of an important reason, the way Google SEO algorithm works, right? Google takes into consideration two things. Consideration number one, your recency of reviews. So you may say that I have 500 reviews and a practice with just 30 reviews ranks above me. The reason most likely for that is because that practice, the 30 reviews are far more new and recent than your 500 reviews, which might be 6 months old, 1 year old, right? So reviews and reputation management is an ongoing strategy. It never stops. The second thing that Google takes into consideration is that, are you responding to your reviews that people are leaving on Google, Facebook, Yelp, right? To make you rank on top and sort of show you as a relevant provider when people search for you online, right? So given that it's important, both from Google as well as your patient's perspective, let's look at what was happening at the practice at Dr. Tilak's office, right? Less than 5% people, which is less than 5% patients. So if she saw 100 patients, only 5 patients would leave her a review, right? And we all know that to request a review, nobody leaves a positive review on their own. But if they've had a bad experience, you don't need to request. They will automatically go out there and leave a review, right? That's human mentality. Less than 5% people were leaving her reviews, and she has 10,000 patients, right? Imagine the number of reviews she could have got. They lost a lot of valuable time responding to these reviews. They had to log into Google, log into Facebook, log into other industry-specific sites like Health Grades, etc. And now imagine they have 2 locations. Imagine you had more than 2 locations. It would become a hassle, right? You've got to respond to not just multiple sites. You also got to respond for multiple locations, right? So I, as a user, I, as a patient, can go and leave a review on Health Grades. Somebody can leave it on Google. Somebody can leave it on Facebook. How do you manage all of this, right? So that's essentially why maintaining a digital reputation was very difficult for them across multiple channels, as well as multiple locations. So what did we do with the help of text messaging, right? We automated all of their review requests. What do I mean by that? Every time a patient walked out of the practice, an hour later, we sent them a review request through SMS saying that, hey, thanks for visiting Mary Tilak. We hope you had a great time, and would you mind leaving us a review? If so, please click on this link. That saw a 100% rise in reviews within 2 months, and I'm going to show you what the metrics look like, right? The reason for that was because 1 hour later, most likely patients were at home, and at the same time, they didn't have to go online and search for Mary Tilak. We sent it to them on the communication medium that they liked, on SMS. And that's essentially what led to the reviews increasing, right? At the same time, we brought in all of her reviews, which is 342 reviews from Google, Facebook, and other channels, into a single dashboard. So her team could respond to these reviews, manage reputation, share these reviews, manage the reputation metrics across multiple sites and multiple locations from a single dashboard. But the exciting part is the result, right? When we started with them, on average, so it says 27%, right? So we saw review requests improve by 27%. But the interesting thing is that on average, they had a 2.2 rating on Google. For a practice with 10,000 patients, the average rating was 2.2, right? If you go and take a look at it today, you can just search for Mary Tilak and Associates Highland, Mary Tilak and Associates Sherville. You will see their current rating. And of course, you can look at their recent ratings. The ratings have gone from 2.2 to 4.7 in just 2 months. They've had 200 plus reviews, right? But that's not all. Apart from saving time, seeing their rating go up, and seeing more reviews, the number of inbound calls have increased by 20%, right? So while we were solving the problem of missed calls for them, now they'll have a lot more calls, and the business is increasing, right? So that's why reviews and reputation is important. So just to sort of recap, we spoke about, and yes, this is the dashboard, right? So if you see, you can sort of, after you get the reviews, you can, after you get the presentation, you can, zoom in and see how many reviews they got, right? They've been getting 80 plus reviews a month. That's a lot. So just to do a quick recap, essentially, to be able to get new patients, you got to focus on missed calls. You got to focus on text message marketing and reviews and reputation. While we do a lot of other things like web chat to text, we help you get referrals. We do a lot of other things, but I just picked up 3 most impactful things, right? And of course, 2-way text messaging, which we've seen people move away from phone calls to text, right? But these are the 3 most impactful things which we've seen create impact on the practice, right? Now let's focus on the second section of this presentation, right? Retaining existing patients. What we've learned that why is it important to retain patients, right? Today, the cost of acquisition is going higher and higher, right? It's almost 5x more expensive to acquire a new patient than to retain a patient. You may ask me why, right? Let me give you a quick example. Today, your competitor is not just the practice locally in your area, right? Your competitor is also people who are writing about anything related to healthcare, right? You have healthcare magazines, you have other softwares that are writing about healthcare. So it's becoming harder and harder for you to get that top spot on Google, right? You're essentially fighting with everybody, and people are becoming more and more distracted, right? You have Netflix, you have Facebook. Everything is taking away distraction. People don't have the patience anymore. At the same time, Google's acquisition costs, Facebook acquisition costs, the ads that you run are going through the roof every passing day, right? With more and more people coming and bidding higher than you. So why should you focus on just acquiring new patients, right? Why shouldn't you focus on retaining existing patients? That's essentially what we're going to focus on today, how you can retain patients. And how we're going to talk about that is by automating annual wellness programs, right? Or you could call it multiple different things, right? You could call it patient reactivation, patient recall. In the dental world, it's called patient recall. In healthcare, it's called patient reactivation. For a primary care physician, it's called annual wellness programs, right? Let's talk a little bit about how you can automate this, right? At Dr. Tilak's office, right? This is the impact we were able to generate. And how did we do that? We were able to automate 100% of her patient reactivation program, right? Essentially, we were able to read into her EMR who are the patients who've not visited the practice in the last 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, so on and so forth, break them down into automated lists and send out automated text messages to them, right? Sending them a quick nudge that it's been 3 months, 6 months. The other program that we ran for them was automated wellness program, right? By type of visit, by visit type. So, for example, some people had Medicare, some people had Medicaid, different insurances being used. Based on the insurance, they had different annual wellness programs that they were, accessible to. What we did is we read those annual wellness program types by visit type, and we automated those reach outs, right? So somebody visited March 31st last year. This year on March 20th, they would get an SMS saying you're due for your annual wellness check. And again, after that, they would get a few follow-ups saying that you're overdue for your annual wellness program, right? That's essentially the impact that we were able to create for Mary Tilak, right? We were able to generate $10,000 additional in revenue for her and 30% increase in patient re-engagement with just automated text message patient reactivation and I would say reactivation and annual wellness programs, right? In addition, we were able to fetch her lists of patients, which she could use anytime for a manual wellness, from manually as well, to send out text messages, right? So that's essentially how she was able to retain a lot of her patients. Of course, we did a lot of other activities. For example, bringing her entire schedule into a system and text enabling it. What do I mean by that? Now imagine that your entire schedule from AthenaHealth, we are fetching that and bringing that into our system, and we are text enabling it, which means that you can send out a text message to all the patients scheduled with a particular provider on a particular day, or just all the patients scheduled for the entire week. With this, they were able to retain all of their patients, right? Let's talk about the last thing today, right, which is keeping schedule full. Before I jump into keeping schedule full, let me give you a brief overview of what I mean by that, right? Keeping your schedule full is important because if any slot goes empty or vacant, you don't just lose revenue once, you lose revenue twice. Now, why do I say that? Imagine that I'm a patient who's visiting the practice, and for some reason I cancel my appointment last minute. Of course, you lose me and you lose that slot. But when I say that I want to reschedule, you got to reschedule me to another day and you lose that slot for someone else who you could have booked during that slot, right? So it's very important to implement technology to make sure that your schedules are full. You can never solve this manually because something or the other will always come up, right? So let's talk about the first capability to keep schedule full, right? Essentially, the first thing before we talk about keeping schedule full is, why do no-shows actually matter, right? On average, a mere 5% reduction in no-shows can result in an additional $50,000 in revenue, right? Now imagine that by employing very simple technology, which will just save you 5%, you're able to get $50,000 additional dollars, right? And how much will you pay for a software like that? Probably a couple of $100 a month, right? So that's essentially how, that's essentially why keeping schedule full matters a lot, right? And on an average, no-show percentage for a medical practice in the USA is 18%, right? Which roughly translates to 2 hours of daily productive time lost, right? That's exactly what we saw with the 1,000+ practices that we work with, right? Let's talk about the impact and how we solve this problem. At Emitrr's office, about 25% of the patients were resulting in no-shows, right? The business had implemented reminders with email and with a patient portal, which required patients to log into a patient portal and confirm their appointment. Now, let me tell you, 0% of the patients did that. Nobody wants to log into a software just to say, yes, I confirm, right? Can you imagine doing that? At least I would never do that, right? That's exactly what we figured out, that people are not reading emails. People are not picking up the phone calls, and it's not the best way to remind people of their upcoming appointment through phone calls. At the same time, if you require people to go into a patient portal, patient portals are something that haven't really worked out for everybody, right? If you require everybody to go into a patient portal and confirm their appointment, you are requiring them to do 2 to 3 steps to just say that, yes, I confirm I will be visiting the practice, right? Which is what did not happen in this case. What we did is we gave them a capability where they could send out reminders in a completely automated as well as customizable fashion, right? Now, let me tell you, what do I mean by automated and customizable fashion? Essentially, they could decide how many reminders they wanted to send, right? Do they want to send 1 reminder, 2 reminders, 3 reminders, maybe 5 days, 3 days, and 2 hours before the appointment? When do they want to send it? Like I said, 5 days, 3 days, 2 hours, or whatever they like, right? Where do they want to send it, right? They could customize the channel, text, email. They're also adding voice. And they could customize the content, right? They could customize what's the message that is going out. So that's essentially what they did, and they saw no-shows reduced by 90%, right, immediately. That's essentially why reminders need to be completely customizable and automated. At the same time, text message, what we allowed the patients to do, which was the second problem, they didn't have to log into a patient portal. We allowed them to, with the help of artificial intelligence, we allowed them to reply to the reminder with a confirmation message typing C, that I confirm. We read that message and wrote it back into the EMR saying this patient confirms, right? Which helped them understand that how many patients are confirming. At the same time, they were able to see the complete list of patients who confirmed, who didn't confirm, and run last-minute campaigns with the system, which is what led to this, right? The overall no-show rates went down to 11%, like I said, from 25% within 3 months, right? With an average revenue of $18,000, right? $18K were increased month on month, right? And customer loyalty, of course, improved by 20%. So it's very important that your reminders strategy is completely customizable, as well as it is multi-channel and automated, right? The second thing that we did with them was fast fill lists. So if you look at the patient journey like a funnel, the first step that you did is you sent them a reminder. 90% of them confirmed, but what happened to the 10%, right? There is still a chance that 5 to 10% of the patients may have something come up last minute, right? And because of which it will lead to last minute cancellations. So that's exactly what happened with her practice. 5% of the overall appointments were being canceled because of last minute cancellations, right? People were canceling last minute, maybe because of something that important that came up, right? Which is essentially 10 plus bookings were canceled last minute, leading to about $3,000 being lost. Now, let me ask you, imagine that a patient told you maybe 2 hours before that, hey, I will not be able to make it to the practice. What will you do today? You will start calling patients and telling them that, hey, we have an earlier appointment. Maybe that's not the best strategy, right? Because then you're dropping off something more important and picking up the phone and calling patients, right? What we did with the system is we looked at her future appointments and patients who said that they would be okay to come in earlier if there's an earlier appointment, earlier slot opens up, right? It's very similar to the way you go into a restaurant, right? And the restaurant tells you that you have 45 minutes waiting. If something earlier comes up, we'll let you know, and they send you an SMS. That's exactly what we do, right? As soon as we see that there is a last-minute cancellation, we send out an SMS to all the patients that are booked far in advance and let them know, hey, we have a last-minute opening. Do you want to come in? And they can book an appointment, right? That's exactly what happened with Emitrr. We did that with automation. And with the fast fill list, the practice was able to offset 60% of their last-minute cancellations, right? The doctors, of course, which is the providers, were able to keep their schedules full constantly, right? And that's exactly what led to their overall patient experience and patient engagement sort of see an exponential rise in the quality. And of course, they were able to save, I can tell you without a doubt that they save hundreds of hours per month, right? By just employing these automations. While we do have a lot of different automations, I just wanted to sort of talk about the most important ones, right? But let's talk about life with and without automation, right? Without automation, you're supposed to do everything manually with the help of phone calls. The biggest disadvantage of phone calls is you can make only one phone call per person at a time, right? You lose revenue. You have to send out manual review requests, manual reminder requests. With automation, all of this is automated, right? With text, you can talk to multiple patients at once, right? Simultaneously. That's the advantage of a centralized text messaging software. You can talk to 10, 15, 20 missed call messages, direct incoming messages, web chat communication, Facebook, Google, so on and so forth, through a single dashboard. You don't have to pick up the phone one by one. That's exactly what I mean by one front desk, multiple customers, and there are no missed communication, right? That's exactly what we do. We have deep vertical capabilities. It's simple and easy to use. And for an investment of less than $500 a month, you get, you probably are going to see an ROI of not of $100,000 a year, right? Let me do a little bit of math, right? You know, forgive me if my numbers with respect to the front desk, because I don't work in an office. In a practice, my front desk numbers might be slightly off, but I'm guessing ballpark they're around the same figure, right? So the cost of a front desk is approximately $16 an hour, right? And a front desk might work 8 hours a day, which is essentially you're spending about $128 to $130 a day. Total cost $45,000. On average, the number of phone calls that the front desk can address is 30. Maybe it will go up to 40, 45, which will see an impact in the quality, right? Which is essentially just 8,000 calls a year. If you have an automation platform, which is almost like employing another employee, right? Which is having an automation platform with an employee, almost like another front desk, but probably for 100x less of the cost. You have the same cost at the front desk, but the number of calls handled by the front desk will go up drastically, which is number of patients, right? Because with text, you can do exactly that. And the number of patients handled per year will also go up, which is essentially what we've seen, right? The business has gone 2.5x. So just to quickly recap, you got to focus on 3 most important goals for your practice, right? You got to keep focusing on acquiring new patients, retaining all the patients that you've acquired, and making sure that your schedule is always full with all the patients that you have, right? And the only way to do that today is with text message automation, right? You can employ email automation, robotic calls automation, right? But that just doesn't pay off. And we've seen that with 1,000+ practices that we work with. Now, while we integrate with AthenaHealth and we're a partner with AthenaHealth, I want to tell you all about the offer that we have. We have 30% off on all of our subscription plans for everybody who would like to use a platform like ours. Like I said, we bring in your entire communication and entire automation into a single platform. For the sake of this presentation, I just focused on the most important ones, but we do have a lot more capabilities, a lot more automations, right? Follow-ups on no-shows, follow-up on missed calls, web chat, and different other channels, text enabling your entire schedule, so on and so forth. So if you're interested, and we have a seamless two-way integration with AthenaHealth, since we are a partner with AthenaHealth, you can reach out to us. You could either call me directly or text me. I personally want to give you all a white glove onboarding. You could email me or just reach out to Emitrr.com and sign up for a demo, and we'll reach out to you, set up a demo, right? So that's essentially what we had for everybody today. I'll pause here to see if there are any questions, and we can go over those questions, right? All right, so I see there is a question from Jay. He says, would you be showing how to send text to patients via the Athena system? Okay, we don't, Jay, that's a great question. We're not showing that on the presentation, I mean, on the webinar today, but we can definitely take that up on the demo if you would be interested in learning more about the text messaging, how we integrate with Athena and bring in all the information, right? Happy to show you that, and I can always reach out to you after this demo as well. Yeah, and like Danielle said, you can always reach out to me for more information on my email ID, which is anmol@emitrr.com. And I'd love to tell you exactly how 1,000+ practices are using this. And if there are any other questions, deeper questions about the product. I see there's another question that's come in, which is from Haley. She's asking us, are those who don't know how to use text, who don't have phones that can text, are we still able to take their calls? Yes, absolutely. And we also show you metrics around how many missed calls or how many messages are coming in from a landline. In addition, to answer your question, on the practice end, you don't need a new phone number, right? We enable you to do that with your current phone number, irrespective of whether that's a software, that's a landline. We text enable your landline as well. But yes, to answer your question, those who don't know how to use text, who don't have phone that can text, we are still able to take their calls. Yes, you're able to do that. Absolutely. Great. Are there any other questions? I see another question has come in from Tim. Is there a copy of this webinar available or just the slides? There is a copy of this available, and you would be provided with a copy of the webinar as well as the slides right after this webinar. Any other questions? We'll just give it another minute. And then, we'll sort of close off for the day, and I'd love to hear from you guys if there are any questions. Yeah, I see there are 2 more questions, so Danielle, I will need a couple of more minutes. How many practices use Athena in conjunction to your business? I can share those numbers with you. I do not have those numbers on top of my head, but I can definitely, and this is from Roberta, I can share those numbers with you. But there are a handful of practices that use Athena in conjunction with our business, right? Jenny says, is there one number that patients text back to? Yes, there's a single number for all the automation, as well as for all the two-way text message communication and all the channels. Everything will be through a single number. That is absolutely correct. And that single number will be your practice number. We don't have to, unless you need, we don't have to provide you with a new number, right? We'll give you we'll essentially text enable your existing number. Okay. And Jay says, thanks for your input. Absolutely. You're most welcome, Jay. Thanks a lot for taking out the time. Thanks, Haley, as well. Maybe we'll just give this another 30 seconds, Daniel, before we close off, just to see if there are others who are, who have questions. Okay, I think we're good, and I don't think we have any other questions. So thank you again, everybody, for taking out time from your busy schedule. We work with 1,000+ practices, so I know what this really means for everybody to take out time during their busy schedule. But really appreciate you taking out time, and I hope you learned something new today. And, hopefully we'll be in touch to help you automate your entire patient engagement and patient experience. Thanks, everybody.